Hey you guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Now this book came out in March, so it's been 2 months, and I meant to get to this in March or / April. But if you guys haven't seen my life update video, then you probably don't know why I haven't. But if I will just leave it linked up here so you guys can watch it and see me awkwardly sit there. But without further ado, let's just jump right in the video. I wish we had pronunciations in this, because I love to pronounce things and I hate butchering it, because I always get annoyed myself when people butcher my name or butcher like places, so I just try really hard not to butcher them. But since I'm butchering, I'm just going to preface this with, I'm really sorry if I butcher. I have no knowledge of any pronunciations from the country that this was based off of, or the people that this was based off of. So if I do mispronounce something, please kindly tell me down below, and I'll be sure that if I mention this book in future videos, that I will go ahead and make sure my pronunciations are correct. But anyways, this follows Zeli, who is from Orisha, which has become a magicless place after the king has killed off all the magi and basically taken all of the things that make things magical. And because of this, Zeli's people have been forced into hiding and have had zero abilities to use their powers. Now, Zeli can remember a time when that wasn't the case, but that time often leads up to her mother's death, and that ends up just not going well. Now, after some trials and tribulations, as per usual, they find out that there's a way to bring magic back, but the only way to do that is if they get there at a certain time frame. If they do not do that, then magic is lost forever, and the Magi will just slowly cease to exist, which is exactly what the King of Orisha currently wants. Now, my first thoughts, I'm thinking about a character in this book, and it's just bringing out all the feels, man. So I guess my first thoughts on this book it's not my first, it's my thirsty thoughts. But my first thoughts on this book was that I was really terrified I wasn't going to like it. Everyone says it's so good, and that there was so much hype behind it that sometimes the hype overdoes it for me, and I end up only liking the book because of the hype. And then when I get there and start reading it and or reread it again or think about it more, I just really don't like it. And then it just kind of sucks, because this book, from what I initially heard of, is so important given what is going on in the climate, and I just wanted to like this so much. So I was very hesitant going in, but my friend had read it before me because she doesn't have to read as much as I do for college. So she got to it, and she said she loved it. She had her issues with it, but she loved it overall and recommended it to me after I had initially recommended for her to read it, but it's fine. She loved it so much, so I just got into it the second that I got the chance to, and I just felt that this was going to be a super intense book, because I remember watching Tomi's Good Morning America interview, I believe, and she had mentioned how this book was like Black Panther just with magic, because this is like based off of West African mythology and whatnot. So like I said, I thought it was gonna be super intense, and I was gonna be super into the book, and I thought there was gonna be a lot of important messages, because I do follow Tomi on Twitter, and all of the time she speaks out about social and political issues, so I felt like that part of her personality would trickle down into her novels. Now, as for things I did like about this book, I thought the world building was really well. I haven't read any fantasies that don't primarily focus on European or Caucasian fantasies that we have grown up with. So to see a West African fantasy, or a book based in West African fantasy and mythology, it was really interesting to see the world and kind of the differences within that world versus the things that I have grown up with and have read about and whatnot. The amount of, you can just tell Tomi went into so much work to write this book, and so much of her heart is in this book. So much of her time and effort. It also doesn't help that she mentioned in the author's note that she cried. So there's that. But you can just tell that so much of her emotion went into this book, and the world building is so vivid, and you can just see everything, and the way she did magic was just glorious, and I just loved it all so much. The characters' inner conflicts were so wonderfully done. You can really sense kind of where they're all coming from, in their like with their place in the world and how they want to make a difference for their homeland, but they have kind of different ways of going about it, and there's no one right way. Actually, there is a right way, and that's very explicitly stated, but like one, it's like there's no right way in their eyes. There's just, no, actually there is a right way in their eyes. There's no like necessarily wrong way. I'll just leave it there. It's just a very skewered and brainwashed way, and then the way that would end up, the way that we all as a writing community kind of is rooting for them to do so. Their inner conflicts also won me over, because it wasn't just the one character with an inner conflict. It was the all of the characters. So it felt very real to me to be able to have characters that have so much conflict within them, and externally, just because it's like this is how their world is going to change afterwards. Like, they have to think about this. They can't just go jumping in head first and hopefully everything works out for the best. I like that there were different point of views, because we got to see like the characters' heads and kind of how they were viewing the world and how they suffered in like different ways, but still suffered under this man's rule. So I thought it was good to kind of give me the point of views of different people who have different perspectives and like different parts of the life. Like, you didn't have one person, like they weren't all solely growing up in the same area or the same position in life. They all grew up differently. There's just one couple in this book that has my heart entirely, and I can't give it away because it's a major spoiler, but you see it right when they first meet, and I just love them so much, like so much, and I need the second book, so I know they will end up okay. And I also really want to see who they end up being in the movie. Like, Tomi, if you happen to hear anything about like casting for like this specific couple, not for that one, the other one, the one that pops up really early on, then you should hit a girl up and tell me, because I need to picture them in that one scene where they're happy. That's all I ask. And then there's a part in the ending that's making me kind of wonder what happened to this character, because like I can't give it away because it's going to be a spoiler-free review, but I don't know what happened. Like, this, like they are in a position where it was left ambiguous about their current state. And I have a feeling about what the state is, because it would be it makes sense. But we still, the last like chunk of the book went from like 0 to 110, and then it like came down to about 100 at the end. But there's that one little 10 that I don't know what happened, and I just need to know, like, is this person okay? Because I don't know. And then on top of that, there's a lot of important points in this book that I feel kind of important messages that I feel often get lost in fantasy settings, just because you're so worried about like the overall view of it, and like not the overall view, but like the world building, the characters, and like the fantastical aspects of it, that you lose any contemporary messages that might be ingrained in the book. And sometimes Tomi does explicitly state it, which does kind of border it a little bit on like corny, but not corny to the point where it threw me out of the book. But I loved the explicit statements, like them being explicitly stated in a way, because they're like I said, they get lost so easily. So to have them be like explicitly stated helps me kind of figure out exactly what kind of themes and messages Tomi wanted out of this book, and for people to pull out of this book, which I think is important, because we don't get that a lot in fantasy. Like, we have a lot of like subtle messages, but they always get lost in the plot, and I feel like those subtle messages are the ones that readers pick up on the most without meaning to, and I feel it's really important to have those be more explicitly stated in some situations. Now on for things I wasn't a huge fan of, and trust me, there isn't a lot, and this one I got over real quick because I just got used to it. But in the beginning, when we were getting comfortable with the different point of views that were in there, I felt that there wasn't a lot of distinction between point of view to point of view. Like, I would figure out whose point of view it was. Like, this was told in first person present tense. and I felt that there were moments where the voices didn't change for me. Like the sentence structure, the wording style, like the diction, and the overall tone of the voices didn't change. Like I was reading and there'd be the same voice, and sometimes I would forget to check the chapter heading to see whose head we're in, and that made it a little difficult to figure out who was who and what had happened. And sometimes when I read, I just have to go through the chapters because not so much because I'm lazy, although that is some of it, but I just get into the book and forget to check them. So I feel there should have been a way to separate the three different voices in such a way where I didn't have to look hard to know who was talking, because I had to look for exactly what they were talking about and everything to know. And sometimes I would be switching from Zelle's point of view to another character's point of view and completely get lost and then be confused and have to go back and see oh, the point of view changed because the character changed, the chapter changed. So I feel that would have been an important part, especially since considering they're all from different parts, different walks of life in a sense. It would have been interesting to see how, one of the characters that we see, two of them actually, are royalty. So I kind of don't know what happened to the video. It ended up cutting off in the middle of a sentence. So I'm just going to finish the review as is on my phone. So if the quality is a little not as great, sorry about it. Can't do much about it. But as I was saying in the video, or in the previous clip, two of the point of views were from royalty, and the other one was from a poorer side of the country. So I thought it would have been very interesting to have seen how the different slang works between each POV, because one of them is trained to be the next heir, the other one's kind of a little more rebellious with the royalty in terms of royalty, and the other one I feel like would have had more slang or instances of slang that would have happened during the book, and I didn't get to see that very often. They just kind of spoke similarly, or their diction was very similar, and it was just kind of confusing to read before I got over it. But like I said before, I did end up getting over this fact. I just kind of had to figure out or put into context what they were talking about, rather than seeing the differences in how they speak and how they or the kind of word choices they use. So it was, aside from that, it was a pretty good book, and 10 out of 10 definitely do recommend it. I think it's great and it has a lot of messages. I can't wait to see where the sequel takes us, how the movie's going to be portrayed, and honestly I would recommend it if you're not only into or trying to get more into West African fantasies, or fantasies that aren't based in, what do you call it? What's the word? That aren't based in, European mythology that we kind of grew up with as children, with, Snow White and, Rapunzel and all that stuff. So if you guys wanted to get into more of that, I recommend this book, as well as if you're trying to get, add more diversity into your reading in terms of different cultures, different backgrounds, and maybe even different forms of hatred within someone's own ethnicity or race. Both. But definitely would recommend. And like I said, sorry that the video randomly cut off and we're here, but I can't do much about it. Other than that, I'll see you guys on Saturday. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys in the comments. If you like more of these videos, hit like, subscribe. I try to upload every Wednesday and Saturday. Other than that, I'll see you guys then. Bye.